Yo, I'm Ray, and what I did right there was a backwards lawn jump, or APLJ for short. Right now I'm running Super Mario 64, trying out 16 star, one of the most popular routes to do for Super Mario 64 in the world of speedrunning. What's that? You don't know what speedrunning is? Well, let me show you what speedrunning is. Now, I wanted to get further research on exactly what speedrunning is, and so I decided to interview Eric Koziel. Otherwise known as Omnigamer, he's been speedrunning for quite some time now, and even wrote a guidebook called Speedrun Science, a long guide to short playthroughs, a nearly 400-page guidebook talking about the technical aspects of speedrunning and how one can get into speedrunning themselves. He's also done some technical work with speedrunning in certain speedrun communities. For example, he created a little technical box that translated into an NES and an SNES controller, so a runner, Zallard1, could play Punch-Out and Super Punch-Out at the same exact time with the same exact controller.
It's tough because you're split between two games.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. The knockdown on Narcus is incredibly difficult, so that's awesome.
So Zallard went ahead and got a 9 count there. So
one more dodge just to be obnoxious, because that's what Nick does. And there we go.
There it is.
Give it up for Zallard 1. 2 games at once.
All good. All right, thank you, Eric, so much for joining this. For my first question right off the bat, in your most basic term, or in the most like simplistic way possible, what is speedrunning?
Speedrunning is a challenge run where you're optimizing for time to complete a certain goal. And a lot of times that's going to be full game completion, but it doesn't always have to be. There's speedruns of Tetris to get to 1,000,000 points, to get to level 21, like all sorts of ways that you can define it. And that's kind of the core piece, is you need something that is the goal and the rules around what you're actually competing for, so that really these rules are there not necessarily to restrict people, but to know how to compare against what anybody else is doing. So long as people are following kind of the same sets of rules and restrictions, you know that, hey, my time is just as good or better than your time. And like you start to establish why that is. You build up communities around that, and that kind of establishes things from there. But the challenge run piece is kind of the most critical part, in that it's something that you can optimize, something that takes you out of the standard mode of play for that game and really gets you into whatever is most interesting to you. And that's why people sit down sometimes and they play bad games that wouldn't normally be enjoyed for the way that they're set up, because you found some new way to accomplish going through it. And that can be the exciting part.
There are many different categories of speedruns, the most popular one being any percent, which is simply beating a game as fast as possible within any means necessary. There's also 100%, which is beating the game while collecting every obtainable item, and low percent, which is beating the game with as little as items as possible. There's also unique categories to each individual game, which makes each speedrunning community unique from each other.
There's much more to speedrunning than what you end up seeing on Twitch and YouTube. You get to see the finished products of a long history of discovery, of practice, testing, failing. You get to see the end result. And for a lot of people, that's kind of the most glamorous part, but there's still a lot of fun to be had in pursuing the entire process just on your own.
During our interview, I also asked Eric about the history of speedrunning, and if there's a defined place where speedrunning started from. What would you say the history of speedrunning is?
The history of speedrunning in a lot of ways is kind of the march of technology. Right now we have easily shareable ideas, information, videos, all the rest of that. So it helps to be able to offer these new perspectives on how to play. It promotes other styles of play than simply in the earlier days in the 80s, 90s, and so on, where a game is a game. And yeah, you can play it in whatever fashion you want, but you have limited reach. You can't get the information about, hey, there's a weird thing that happens if you start jumping against this wall. Um, all the little bits and pieces of that kind of get lost. You can find that yourself and you can feel good about it yourself, but you can't share it. And that's one of the things that, as we moved on to the internet coming up, video recording equipment is more easily available these days. Sites like YouTube and Twitch allow sharing of immediate content. A lot of that promoted, in many ways, just the way that speedrunning came up. And the mission of going fast and finding skillful ways to play, it's always been there. It's just now there's the opportunity to actually go through and share your discoveries, to test yourself against other people. And that's what a lot of the history kind of focuses on, is like early days. It's not that there weren't people speedrunning or challenging themselves or competing, just it's very different. You're sending your scores and your times into magazines. Nintendo Power had entire sections where they'd ask for, hey, send us a picture or even a videotape of your completion of Donkey Kong Country, getting 102%, things like that. And that would be it. It's like, oh, I have the chance for my name to appear in a magazine. That was what compelled a lot of people. Moving on, you've got Doom. It starts to get, here's some ways to share performances that isn't strictly video. It's a small file that replays my entire session going through Doom. And this was wild for them at the time. It's not necessarily like groundbreaking technology, but just being able to share a file that represents a performance really made a leap forward. And then, yeah, from there, you start to get more into video flavors, being able to record different consoles. And, well, you've got today where you just flip on Twitch and you've got dozens, if not hundreds, of people speedrunning something at any given moment. So it's definitely caught up.
What Eric is saying here is that speedrunning has been around since the invention of video games. But the speedrunning that we know today evolved in the 90s, thanks to the boom of the World Wide Web and games like Doom and Quake, which had easily shareable replay files that users could share with each other to see how fast they could beat the levels in Doom and Quake. One way speedrunning has evolved since the early 90s is events that have taken place that showcase speedrunning, where runners get together and they showcase their games and how fast they can beat them. One such event is Games Done Quick. Games Done Quick is a series of charity events that take place around the world of speedrunning. Runners will come from all over the world to showcase their game and show people exactly how fast they can beat their games. You have casuals to tryhards, Tetris players to dancers, and even people who do insane tricks, which absolutely wows the crowd. One such run that I witnessed was a run of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where the runner, Bubzia, was doing an any percent blindfold run, where you beat the game as fast as possible, but with losing one of your 5 senses. I watched Bubzia practice in the practice room a few days before he actually did his run, and it was absolutely insane to watch the work that this man put in. It was amazing. Events like Games Done Quick aren't just about showcasing speedruns though. It also creates a space for speedrunners to come together from different games and categories. These events have public spaces like an arcade and a public practice room where runners, even those who aren't a part of the event, can practice together. These events are vital to keeping speedrunning going, as well as making sure that speedrunning never dies. Has there been anything that you've, like, out of the 13 years that you've been doing speedrunning, has there been anything that's kind of like your favorite speedrunning moment that you've seen?
You know, there was something really special in the earlier GDQ days. That first event where we raised more than $1 million for Prevent Cancer Foundation, that was AGDQ 2014. And that was kind of also one of the main breakout moments. But being in that room when we crossed the line. We got to do the big shout at the end from Maikuyama, goal, all the rest of those classic moments. Like there's definitely something really exciting about just being there, being a part of it. And then, of course, it's taken off quite a bit since then, even. But those earlier days were kind of a different. They were a different feel to the events, to just the community at large, and spending time with your speed buddies, getting together the once or twice a year that you can, just really figuring out things and kind of taking your craft and your hobby to the next level, all among like-minded folks. Like that's something that's really special, and I had that even earlier on with Smash Brothers stuff. Like you'd go to the local regional tournaments, and you see the folks that you talk to online, and you get your chance to compete against them. And but outside of that, like outside of the game, they're cool people who have a like-minded focus. So you go out with them, you play dodgeball with them, you have these just silly meals, and like part of that experience is some of my favorite memories across all of gaming, between Smash Brothers, speedrunning, all the rest of that, is just finding the people that you click with and getting the opportunity to spend time with them, new ways to experience your hobby and experience the people who practice it.
And then final question, do you have any last things to say about speedrunning, your history, anything?
Games are most fun when you're curious. So that goes for old games, new games, everything I'm talking about with discovering the universe of the game that you're playing. That applies no matter whether you're doing speedruns or doing casual playthroughs. It's really about kind of understanding that world that developers built, and ultimately it's yours to play around with. So I encourage curiosity. You see something weird, something you don't understand, spend some time with it. Just take a little time, try it a different way, experiment with other places. Just kind of push the edge of what you know about the game and what might normally even be possible. And you can find many discoveries, whether they're relevant to a speed run or just like, oh, I can fall through the floor in this spot if I go through these motions. Like there's something that is really rewarding about those kinds of discoveries just for yourself. And I would encourage everybody to kind of take that scope. Whatever you're playing, enjoy it. Find the way that makes it rewarding for you, whether it's completing the game or finding something new and interesting that you didn't know about it, and take that as far as you can.
All right, sweet. Thank you so much, Omni.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.